Good evening, everybody, and welcome to 2023, first show of the new year. We got some stuff planned. We're having some fun, starting things off on the right foot. You know, one of the things that we heard from a couple of folks on the break is that hey, the breakdown, you guys are taking yourselves too seriously. You think you're some kind of big deal. It's not okay to make jokes when you're talking about serious things. We wanted to set the record straight at the start of the new year. That's why I'm going to be doing the first half of the show in my it's a Yeti costume. It's not an abominable snowman. You can't say abominable snowman. That is I learned over the break that's a little bit prejudiced. So you can't say abominable snowman, but it's a Yeti onesie, very comfortable, very roomy, and we're going to start the night out with some fun before we get to some serious stuff, because there's some serious stuff that we definitely have to talk about tonight. We're going to be joined initially by a good friend of the show, Ziad Fazel, who's going to be talking about some mask stuffs. He put up a big thread on the Twitter machine recently where he talked about some of the questionable decisions that were made in regards to mask procurement. I'm going to let him do all the talking on that, because if I try to do it, I'll screw it up. We're going to be also having in a little bit, Sarah Biggs is going to be joining us for the first show of the new year, and we're going to be talking about all of the other things. But before we get too far into things, we're going to have our little rundown. We're going to do our little bit of fun. So to start with, it's been a week and a half since our last show, almost 2 weeks now. There's been a lot that's happened. There's been a lot that has been going on. To start with, we wanted to follow up with one of the big stories that we were playing around with on our last episode, and that had to do with the question of Tracy Allard. Tracy Allard was appointed a parliamentary secretary for civil rights or something. And there was a story that came out of the Tyee that was published. It was Charles Russell who initially broke the story. And he talked about the fact that part of the mandate, ironically enough, that had been included for Allard was allegedly her job. One of her missions, one of her big roles in life was going to be talking about vaccines, because Danielle Smith has walked back her whole thing on, you know what, we're going to be doing, we're going to be including vaccination status as a protected human right. Turns out you can't do that because it's a choice. So you can't do that. It's just how the laws work. But instead, she's going to still keep her commitment to her base. She's going to go ahead and appoint Allard to be this new parliamentary secretary. And a lot of people immediately came out like, no, it's not about the vaccines. They tried to backpedal it. But as Smith can so well be relied upon, she went ahead and she did an interview. She did an interview with the Western Standard. And with the Western Standard, here's what she had to say about what Allard's role was going to be with this.
I'm actually pleased to see that employers have really stepped up to my challenge, that they are not discriminating for the most part against people on the basis of their medical choice. There are some isolated cases where that's occurring, and I've just put in place a new Civil Liberties Parliamentary Secretary, Tracy Allard, so that she can be investigating those and letting me know if there are any problems, and hopefully we'll be able to continue using persuasion so that we don't end up with any discrimination for any reason in Alberta.
Well, I'm sure she will use persuasion, but will she have powers in the end?
I think people are being quite responsible. The sense that I'm getting is that people really do want to move on and move forward from what we've been through over the last 2.5 years. And I'm hoping that continues. I think there's been a great deal of change and movement in the last year, and I'm glad to see that.
Now, there's, as always with any Danielle Smith clip, there's a whole lot to unpack there. But I think maybe one of the first thing is obviously Danielle Smith is very clearly saying, you know what, the Allard's role is to make sure that if there's any sort of people who are saying, hey, we want to have health protections, we want to make sure that people who are using our establishments, we would like the ability to make that choice for ourselves. If anybody's trying to do that, she's going to send Allard in. Allard's going to go in. She's going to be very persuasive, which leads to the second fun little part of that clip, because you could hear the interviewer say in a very stern, butlery kind of voice, but will she have any power? And Smith did an exemplary job of entirely dodging that question and saying, well, people are being responsible. I don't think it's really going to be needed. So again, it seems like it's another one of those performative pieces from Danielle Smith where she's talking about we've given Allard this role. It's going to be great. There's going to be huge changes, but at the same time, maybe not so much. Maybe it's just symbolic so that she can say that she did. That would certainly be on brand for Smith. Now we got some other Smith clips coming up in just a couple of minutes here, but we're gonna save them to kind of intersperse a little bit of the serious with the not so serious. Moving on from there, one of the other things that people like to talk about a lot is it's just one vote. One vote doesn't matter. And as we're heading into only a couple of months now away from the next provincial election, allegedly, as we're only a couple of months away from the next provincial election, there's a lot of reasons why people do or do not choose to get involved. And the reality is, as we saw, one vote can make all of the difference in a really, really big way. In the nomination for Bonnyville, Cold Lake St. Paul, the nomination race for the UCP candidate was decided by only one vote. That's it. That was the whole ball game. Just one vote made the whole decision. And it's important to realize that one vote made some pretty big changes in regards to who's potentially going to be representing that constituency, or at least running to represent that constituency on the UCP side, because the incumbent MLA didn't win. Instead, Scott Cyr, and I hope I'm saying that right, Scott Cyr, became the nominated candidate. Now, Scott is not entirely new to politics. Scott was actually a previous MLA. He didn't win in 2019. He didn't get a seat in 2019. And he has a bit of a history. And this is another one of those places where talking about the nominations gets to be almost as important, if not more important, than the general election, because it's the nominations that so many organizations are putting so much effort into trying to influence the outcome. And it's because if you get nominated with one of the two major parties, your odds of getting a seat are actually really, really quite high. And certain socially progressive or regressive or conservative groups tend to back different candidates. And there's a couple of reasons potentially why this race was so close with Scotty there. One of the possible reasons was his stance on the GSA issue. So in 2017, when the NDP introduced Bill 24, and they were talking about the fact that, hey, you know what? If kids are not comfortable disclosing to their parents that they're attending a GSA, presumably because the relationship is not such that those kids feel safe disclosing that information to their parents, it shouldn't be forcibly disclosed. Kids should be able to have a right to some privacy, especially when it comes to sensitive issues like GSAs, LGBTQ2S+ issues, when there are a lot of, unfortunately, there are parents out there who treat LGBTQ2S+ kids really, really terribly. All one has to do is take a look at the statistics for the number of youth that are on the street, and there is a startling and alarming overlap that exists. Well, there were only 9 MLAs that voted against that bill. One of them, Scott Cyr. So the UCP MLAs who voted against the bill were Drew Barnes, Rick McIver, Richard Gottfried, Prab Gill, Scott Cyr, Glenn Van Dyken, David Schneider, Ron Orr, and independent MLA Derek Fildebrandt. So Scott Cyr is going to be the new guy representing the UCP in the next provincial election. Nothing to be alarmed about there, I'm sure, he said sarcastically in his Yeti onesie. Because we're doing serious and silly at the same time. Here's the breakdown. It's part of our brand. Deal with it. Moving on from there, there's been some other changes that have come around, and I shouldn't even say changes. There's been some calls for changes that have come around because of the ongoing situation with the respiratory virus crisis, particularly when it comes to kids in Alberta. And there's two groups that we want to highlight over the break that tried to raise the alarm a little bit. The first one is the Nurses Association. They released a letter that they sent to Premier Smith as well as Health Minister Jason Copping, where they said, hey, you know what, this COVID situation, this respiratory virus situation, this RSV situation, it's hammering the hospitals. It's hammering the healthcare system. And there's things that we could do. Could we maybe perhaps think about doing some of these things? The government didn't. But they weren't the only group. The emergency medical arm of the Alberta Medical Association also said, hey, you know what? ERs are getting trashed. We're having a really hard time out here. There's things that we could do that would help stop the crush that the healthcare system is experiencing. Would you please consider doing some of that? Now, there comes a certain point. Daniel Smith has liked to say, speaking of the respiratory, Daniel Smith has liked to say that, you know, one of the big mistakes that was made during the pandemic was we listened to the experts. And that is almost such an impossibly ignorant and stupid statement to try to unpack. Because the reality is that if we don't listen to the experts, then we don't have a clue what we're doing. And it seems pretty clear, despite the fact that there are many experts that are coming forward and are saying, hey, we've got a problem here. Things are really, really bad. The province continues to say, you know what, we're not going to do anything about that. That sounds like it could be work or something. We don't want to alienate people. We don't want to anger people, freedom of choice and all of that sort of thing. Meanwhile, emergency rooms are overflowing. Meanwhile, we're seeing dozens and dozens of deaths every single week. And these are not deaths that are commensurate with previous year's flu numbers. The reality is the pandemic, as well, it brought a few friends, is running largely unchecked right now. It's a serious thing. And we wouldn't be seeing the United Nurses Association. We wouldn't be seeing the Alberta Medical Association, emergency medical folks saying we've got a problem here if we didn't actually have a problem here. So this is an important thing that we need to do a better job of talking about. But of course, as always, there's more. Moving on from there, we got to talk about Danielle Smith's performance on the CBC machine. So on December 28th, Danielle Smith deigned to do an interview where she talked with CBC reporter Jason Markusoff, and she explained her stance on a bunch of things and a bunch of stuff. And it was, to call it a telling interview is probably a little bit of an understatement, because she did make a few of her positions pretty clear. I want to play a couple of clips from that for you right now, because there's some gooders.
I don't regret too much, honestly. I do feel like I've got a lot of learning opportunities in my history. And every time I've made a blunder, and I've made a lot, it seems to work out.
Which is not necessarily what some people want to see from somebody in a position of leadership. You know what? I make mistakes all the time, but it always works out for me. So what are you going to do? What do you have to complain about? But the cherry on the top, you know, there were so many comparisons between Danielle Smith and the ex-British Prime Minister who lasted, the head of lettuce did, in fact, outlast her. And one of the clips that a lot of people were alarmed by with that British Prime Minister was a self-congratulatory nod that she gave herself, where she was talking about, I gave the right answer. And Smith had her own little lettuce moment, and I can't stop watching this, so we're just going to share this with you as well.
BS detector evolved over time?
I tend to be pretty trusting.
I can watch that over and over again. It's the second nod that really seals it, because again, there's nothing wrong with being trusting. There's nothing wrong with being open to new ideas, new thought processes, new evidence. But when you're just trusting old evidence, or when you're trusting disproved evidence because it makes you feel good, or it makes you feel comfortable, or it makes other people feel a little bit good. That's called a placebo. And while it might have a mild positive effect, it does not have the same effect as real medicine. And for the Premier of Alberta to be sitting there and saying, well, you know what? I like placebos too. I'll give them a try. I'll give anything a try. That is deeply alarming, because the reality is, as Premier of Alberta, she does have the full resources of the provincial government at her disposal, where she should and could be making actually evidence-based decisions, as opposed to just saying, you know, I just keep getting away with it. I guess I'll keep doing that. Perhaps one of the best examples of her just keep getting away with it and continuing to do that is the ongoing debacle surrounding the pill situation. So some of you may remember a little while back at the beginning of December, Danielle Smith made an announcement where she talked about the fact that there was going to be 5 million bottles of children's medication that was going to be brought into Alberta. There was a whole process. It was going to be absolutely amazing. One of the processes that Danielle Smith talked about during this was the idea that she had reached out to this company in Turkey, and we're going to have Zayed join us in just a second, but she had reached out to this company in Turkey where they had agreed they would go ahead and they would manufacture 5 million bottles of children's acetaminophen, or children's and children's ibuprofen. There were only a few problems. One of the biggest problems was the fact that that company doesn't actually make those medications in the amounts or quantities that the province was trying to order. One of the other problems was the fact that that company wasn't actually allowed to sell those medications in Canada. Now, Danielle Smith and Jason Copping at the time said, you know what? We're working with the feds. We're expediting things. It's going to be great. We're going to get rapid approval. Things are going to be fine. It's on the shelves any day now. In fact, Bob Anderson, who is Danielle Smith's right-hand guy, came out and he did a whole thing about how 10 plane loads ready to go. Well, first of all, the medication hasn't even been manufactured yet, so no. Second of all, the reality is those approvals still hadn't manifested. They still didn't exist. Well, we got an update. City News reported over the Christmas break that a spokesperson for Health Canada tells City News Edmonton that they're still reviewing the Alberta-based import request for children's medicine, and there is still no timeline if or when the Turkish products may get approval. So hurry up and wait. In the meantime, the federal government has done a very good job of freeing up and ensuring that the regular branded, not the off-brand Turkish stuff, but the regular branded Tylenol or acetaminophen and ibuprofen, all of that stuff is now back on the shelves. And most people are able to find it in their pharmacies, if not on the shelves themselves. They're able to find it just by talking to their pharmacist to make sure that people aren't hoarding them. But they're available now. So for reasons that still defy most forms of comprehension, the province of Alberta has, for whatever reason, decided to still chase down 5 million bottles in a province of 4 million people of children's ibuprofen and acetaminophen. We're going to spend Lord knows how much money on that. Still don't know. It hasn't been released publicly. There's been some estimates that have done, but we don't know, when the supply chain has already started to reopen. So that's super fun. And you know, fiscal conservatism at its highest. Moving on from there, we have a couple of late additions that we want to highlight before we get through our one big kind of deep dive thing, and then we're going to get into the conversation with Ziad and Sarah. So to start with, first of all, a lot of people coming up to the year anniversary of the convoy, the occupation of Ottawa. A lot of people are quite comfortable, myself included, calling it a terrorist occupation. It was an illegal occupation. It did require the invocation of the Emergencies Act. We did see at the Coutts border, there are multiple people facing multiple charges, up to and including the planned murder of police officers. There were billions of dollars in trade lost. Well, the convoy folks, they wanted to have 2.0. They wanted to come back for another kick at the can. But today, this afternoon, as we were preparing the show, we saw that this little ditty was released. So the original plan from one of the original convoy organizers, a gentleman named James Bowder, was that they were going to meet up in Ottawa this time. They were going to go to the heartbeat of Canada. They were going to meet in the middle. They were going to go to Winnipeg. And they were going to have come from all across the country, coast to coast. Everybody's going to come into the middle. They're going to have a big freedom celebration in Winnipeg in January because that'd be warm. And Mr. Bowder released a statement through Canada Unity today where they said, so about that, we're not going to do that anymore. Shockingly, a disorganized group of people who are coming together with a boatload of different grievances weren't able to get it together to organize a national movement. So the convoy to Winnipeg, I'm sure there's a lot of people in Winnipeg right now who are very, very happy about that. The convoy to Winnipeg has been canceled. But that's not all that happened today. There was another little news story that popped up. It's this little guy right here. So Justice Center for Constitutional Freedom's president, John Carpe, turned himself into police this weekend after a warrant was issued for his arrest regarding the time he had a private investigator follow a Manitoba judge. Now, John Carpe is quite the character, not only in Alberta politics, but in Canada politics. This is a guy who, Jason Kenney, I wish I was making this up. Jason Kenney has referred to previously as the Rosa Parks version, Alberta's version of Rosa Parks, because middle-aged white dude fighting for no masks and no vaccines equals Rosa Parks fighting against centuries of oppression and literal slavery and murder and genocide. It's pretty much the same thing, according to Mr. Kenney. Fortunately, Mr. Kenney's largely made himself irrelevant on the political scene. But John Carpe continues to try to do everything that he can to get people's attention. John Carpe also has had a particularly toxic, according to some people, impact on the discourse in Alberta politics. And this goes all the way back to the 2019 election. Some of you might remember that Mr. Carpe, we'll come back to that in a sec. Some of you might remember Mr. Carpe was part of a lawsuit. The Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms was part of a lawsuit that introduced some claims about GSAs. These claims were then repeated at length by the UCP during the provincial election. These claims included things like kids were taken off of the property without their permission, that kids exposed to inappropriate materials without the kids' permission. They were all based on a statement that was released by somebody who attended a conference. It turns into a whole long, convoluted thing. Fortunately, we untangled that whole shit show a little while ago. So we actually sat down with the woman who was at the center of this whole thing, Maria DeLue, and she explained how that entire thing was misrepresented. It was taken out of context and it was fabricated. And in fact, it was so full of garbage that the judge ruled all of those statements inadmissible in that court case. But they were still initially read before they were ruled to be inadmissible, because that's how the process works. So at that point, the people who wanted to misrepresent the issue and put vulnerable kids at risk were able to say, hey, you know what? There's this thing, this court thing, and there's certain articles that continue to get passed around, despite the fact the whole thing has been entirely disproven as false. I would encourage anybody who wants to know the full length of the thing to go back and listen to our conversation with Maria DeLue, because she was doing some amazing work to support vulnerable kids. And the way that it was manipulated and turned on its head is absolutely appalling. So there's that to begin with. That was compliments of Mr. Carpe. But the thing that Mr. Carpe apparently has gotten in trouble for is he during a court challenge in regarding to COVID health measures, he paid a private investigator who was a private investigator to follow the judge of the case that was hearing by the JCCF. So the JCCF, let me start that over again. Basically, the JCCF said, hey, you know what? We're going to sue because we think that these health measures are inappropriate. And that court case went before a judge. That judge was hearing the case, and John Carpe hired, allegedly, a private investigator to follow the judge to find out if he was maybe not following health measures 100%. To find out if maybe the judge was doing something embarrassing that could have the judge removed from the case. Now, not only is this unbelievably unethical, given the fact, if it's true, given the fact that Mr. Carpe is a lawyer, but it's also super illegal. So it's not really any surprise that Mr. Carpe did get criminally charged for doing, a crime. Shouldn't really come as a shock to anyone, one would think. But all of this talk about John Carpe, we kind of wanted to go down memory lane a little bit because, as we talked about earlier, Mr. Carpe has a lot of issues with LGBTQ2S+ issues. They just seem to really, really get under his skin for some reason. And we saw that a couple years ago when Mr. Carpe actually went and did a whole bit where he spoke at the Rebel, a Rebel Live event. And here's the quote: "How do we defeat today's totalitarianism? You've got to think about the common characteristics. It doesn't matter whether it's a hammer and sickle for communism, or whether it's the swastika for Nazi Germany, or whether it's the rainbow flag. The underlying thing is a hostility to individual freedoms." Now, Mr. Carpe later claimed that quote was taken out of context. The words seem pretty clear, especially the last part. The underlying thing is a hostility to individual freedoms. That's not what the rainbow flag is about. That's not what LGBTQ2S+ issues are about. You take a look at what most LGBTQ2S+ issues are about, and it's about people who just want to be able to live their lives without having to worry about being persecuted. We saw an example just a couple of weeks ago where homeless advocate Chaz Smith was assaulted because he's LGBTQ2S+. There's no other reason for that. The words that were used during the assault made it very, very clear what the motivations were. So we're not talking, when we're talking about LGBTQ2S+ issues, when we're talking about the rainbow flag, we're talking about people who would just like to not maybe get beat up today, if that's not too much to ask. But Mr. Carpe felt the need to include that flag. And his argument coming out of that was, hey, you know what? It's just a flag. All flags are the same if they're used a certain way. If flags are being used to hurt people or oppress people, it doesn't matter what the flag is. I was taken out of context. How do we know this? Because we sat down with Mr. Carpe back in 2021. And we wanted to give him the opportunity to clarify his statements. And we wanted to give him the opportunity to maybe apologize for, whether it was intentional or not, the hurt that he very clearly caused a lot of the members of the LGBTQ2S+ community. And all of the excitement today caused us to go back memory lane. And we just wanted to share the end of that interaction one more time. One more really quick one and then we're done. Could we substitute out the UCP flag for the rainbow flag in that metaphor?
Oh God, why don't you ask me that as your opening question the next time that we talk? Because I'm not running away from it, but I need to get to an appointment. Some people are going to be very angry and disappointed. So okay. Happy to address it next time we chat.
Okay, thank you very much.
I really got to go.
You get your appointment. We haven't been able to connect since. I guess it was maybe a long appointment. Hard to say for sure. Moving on from there, just got a couple more things to talk about, and then we're going to be bringing in Ziad to talk about the masking stuff. And the thing that we wanted to really spend a little bit of time on tonight is something that people have been seeing a lot of during their hockey games. There's a new advertising company that appears to have popped up. The technical term in Alberta would be a TPA, or a third-party advertiser, although many people are more familiar with the term PAC from the United States, which is short for Political Action Committee. We are, of course, talking about the Alberta First Initiative. People were noticing during NHL games that all of a sudden all of these ads were popping up. We want to show you an example of one of these ads real quick before we get into who it looks like is behind Alberta First, and maybe possibly what some of the motivations are.
The cost of providing, to pay rent or heat our homes, to feed our families. Us Albertans never count the cost for those we love, but a cost we cannot afford is an NDP government who would pile taxes, more debt, and punishing policy on the backs of our most vulnerable. Alberta, we can't afford the NDP.
Boy, everybody was so sad in that video. The audio was a little low. It's because we pulled it off of a rip of a TV commercial because we couldn't find any. The Alberta First website's actually surprisingly sparse. It doesn't have any of these super powerful ads. One would think for an organization that's trying to get the word out that they would have videos available to share, but their website doesn't seem to have any of those things. What it does have is a little bit of information about who they are and what they're about. They're a labor of love. Their goal is to promote policies that put Albertan interests and her people first. Alberta is now a gendered province, which is fascinating given who we're coming from. But the founder, Mackenzie Lee, is a gentleman who says over the years, there's been Ottawa is just the worst. They're so bad. They keep treating Alberta super bad, and it's time that Alberta has a loud voice. Danielle Smith is going to be the person to be that loud voice. And you know, that's good for Mac for exercising his free speech and his passion for Alberta. And certainly there's no reason to believe that Mac would be doing any of this because of any kind of ulterior motives. Unless, of course, you decide to do a little bit of a cursory Google search. Because when you start to go through, first, who is Mackenzie Lee, you get to a couple of LinkedIn profiles. One of those LinkedIn profiles lists Mac as the president of a couple of different organizations, oil and gas organizations. Well, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with somebody in oil and gas advocating for oil and gas. But what caught our attention as we were scrolling our way through this little spider web was the fact that there's an endorsement at the bottom. Mac was endorsed by a gentleman named Chris Kinnear. Now, we've talked about Chris Kinnear on the show before, and we're going to get to why in just a second here. Because Chris Kinnear, he's got a bit of a history in the province of Alberta. He was the president and CEO of the Sustaining Alberta's Energy Network. Oh, what's this? Chris Kinnear also was a campaign coordinator, Danielle Smith campaign. And right after Danielle Smith was elected, he became a special project manager for the Alberta government. What luck. Here he is running the Sustaining Alberta's Energy Network organization. He stumbles into working as Danielle Smith's campaign coordinator. And then all of a sudden he gets a job working for the provincial government under special projects. Well, gosh, what kind of special projects would those possibly be? Has Chris ever done any sort of advocacy related to Danielle Smith at all in the past? In fact, he has. Danielle Smith and Chris Kinnear both worked together to promote the R-Star program. Some people call it a scam. We did a whole episode where we talked about R-Star with a couple of people who have been advocating for everybody to run away from R-Star as quickly as possible. And in fact, the provincial government already has. And the reason for that is effectively what R-Star does is it says, hey, you know what, oil and gas companies, we gave you this sweet deal to pull all of the oil and gas out of the ground. And all we said was, you got to give us a very small percentage of what you make off of it. And then when you're done, if you could just kind of clean it up, that'd be great. Well, the reality is there's a lot of companies that haven't done that. And when we're talking about the amount of money that it's going to be required to remediate or to clean up the messes that were left behind by oil and gas companies that didn't clean up their own mess. We're talking about hundreds of billions, and that's with a B, of dollars. This is money that is almost inevitably going to come out of the taxpayer's pocket. Well, what the Smith government wants to do with the R-Star program is they want to say, hey, you know what? If you guys do the bare minimum, if you do that bare minimum cleanup, we're going to give you bonuses. It is an incredibly cynical view of the oil and gas industry to say that the only way that responsible oil and gas producers are going to take care of the messes that they've made is that if we bribe them. There are a lot of oil and gas companies that do a great job. Unfortunately, there's also a lot that don't. And Danielle Smith's and Chris Kinnear's solution is to say, you know what, we're going to give them credits, we're going to give them bonuses, it's going to be fantastic, and then we'll get things cleaned up. And the reality is that still costs taxpayers lots of money, and it defers the costs from the companies that made the mess to the taxpayer again. Now, this was a whole program that Danielle Smith lobbied for before she ran to be leader of the UCP. And like I said, it's a program that the UCP under Kenney said there's no financial case for this. This goes against the principles of what we've said we're going to do in regards to how we're going to manage our resources. This sounds like a terrible idea. So no, thank you, no. But then all of a sudden, Danielle Smith is now the premier of Alberta. Chris Kinnear is now the special projects guy working on stuff. And oddly enough, the Sustaining Alberta's Energy Network website is undergoing scheduled maintenance for like almost a month now, I think it is. Could be wrong on the exact timeline, but they're not doing super great in regards to sustaining their own website, let alone Alberta's energy network. Now, one of the problems with third-party advertisers or PACs is that they are financially quite opaque, and we aren't going to get to see until we're pretty much in the next election who paid for the ads that we saw over the last little while. But we do get to see their January 1st to September 30th, 2022 amounts, and there's some interesting names on there. One of them, Catherine Brownlee Incorporated. Catherine Brownlee is the new president of the organization that Danielle Smith was lobbying for. So that's probably just a wild coincidence. There's a couple other ones that are interesting on there as well. But at the end of the day, the Alberta First Initiative is being spearheaded by a guy who not only shares, at the very least, a relationship with Chris Kinnear, but when you take a look at the companies that they worked for, they both worked for a couple of the same companies. They worked together. So the idea that the Alberta First Initiative has anything to do with advocating for Alberta against the tyranny of Ottawa only is certainly somewhat suspect, given the fact that one of the guys who designed the program that Danielle Smith lobbied for and is still advocating for, and in fact included in one of the mandate letters that she gave to her ministers to pursue, that wastes taxpayers' money. They're buddies. It's cool, though. Moving on from there, we're going to talk about masks. And we've got Ziad Fazel joining us. Ziad, thank you so much for sitting through that whole beginning. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Oh, it was terrible, terrible, Nate. I suffered. You know how much I hate to learn about Alberta politics or scandal or wrongdoing in our province. So you tortured me through that. And I had to wear PPE to protect myself against it.
That's fair. I was going to try to do the whole thing with the Yeti onesie. It's really warm. So you're here to talk about masks. So you put up quite the thread. Let's talk about that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's at about 40 tweets so far, and I'll probably add another 20 or so. I have two problems. One is that I like to dig into stuff and that and share, cite my sources. So partly that makes my threads longer, and partly as I'm digging into stuff, I find more problems. And so thanks to the Alberta government's behavior, what was supposed to be a 20 tweet thread turns out to be a 40 to 60 tweet thread. Now, I'm wearing a duckbill right now. And the reason I'm wearing a duckbill is a couple of reasons. One, you are wearing a Yeti, and so I needed to wear a fun animal for New Year's Day, so I wore a duckbill. The other reason I'm wearing a duckbill is that this used to be the N95 that Alberta Health Services employees, healthcare workers, used to wear when they were dealing with infectious diseases that our AHS folks would admit are airborne. And so they would wear an N95, and this doesn't look like your normal N95. It's wonderful. It's like having a paper towel on my face or breathing through a little paper towel origami, as opposed to, like, this is an N95. Like, this matches or meets NIOSH requirements, but it's as easy to breathe through as a procedural mask. And in fact, has been tested independently to be as easy to breathe through as a blue leaky or the flat mask that healthcare workers are normally wearing. So I just wanted to wear it at the beginning so you get a sense of what it's like, and so you can see how I sound with it on. I'm going to take it off and we'll talk about masks a bit more.
Yeah, you're not at all muffled with that at all.
No, it's a beautiful mask, and I'll get into the technical side of it more. So this is a 2022 recap, and believe me, there's lots of stuff that happened in 2022. But I just want to take you back to 2020 for a second, because now all of you healthcare workers here, I'm going to show you the box of the Vance masks, and I'm very sorry for doing this. I hope you still have some alcohol left in the house so you can, actually I'm not really advocating alcohol, but really this is a mask that upset, angered, hurt, endangered a lot of healthcare workers. So this is the Vance mask that in April and May 2020, the Alberta Health Services tried to foist on healthcare workers, and it's just garbage. And it's not a single mask manufacturer. It came from a distributor of stationery, who then at least 4 different manufacturers' products were repackaged into this box. So this is kind of a laundry or a front of mask manufacturer for the true mask manufacturers who are behind it. And so there was no official regulatory position. It's just myself and I and a few other people warned healthcare workers who talked to their unions, and the unions said, we are not taking this crap. Now, AHS put out some spin documents then, but it didn't work out too well. So, 2020 was a time of great demand exceeding supply. And so, we had primarily these PrimaGuard masks. So PrimaGuard has been the AHS supplier for 20 plus years, and they were having trouble meeting the demand. So these PrimaGuard masks, in fact, these are the ones in the AHS price list for about 60 cents each. And they were intended for the German market, so they meet the European requirements. Then in the summer of 2020, Orpix masks. So it was announced in October of 2020, but the actual deal was done in June or earlier of 2020. But in October of 2020, Minister Shandro, then Health Minister, and Minister Doug Schweitzer, then Minister of Jobs, Economy, and other happy stuff, announced a deal for 40 million of these ASTM Level 1 masks for $60 million. So $1.50 each. So, you look at that and you go, well, okay, $1.50, maybe that was a time when it was hard to get stuff, but AHS was getting these even during the worst of the times for 60 cents each. And if you look at the contract prices that were available then, by the fall of 2020, summer, fall of 2020, we're looking at 15 cents each, not $1.50. So the Alberta government overpaid about 10 times for those. So what I wanted to talk to you about is 3 things. I've told you about me being a Bob Dylan flip chart guy. So I'm going to talk to you about the procedural masks that are at AHS now in 2022. the fit-tested N95s, which are required under the respiratory program, and then the KN95s, which is what the hell is this and why is it here? Sorry, excuse my profanity. This one really gets me.
That's not that profane.
I could work on it. I'm an engineer. I have access to better words. So with the procedural masks, I wanted to talk to you about VAG, Primed, Orpix, and the Canadian Alliance of PPE Manufacturers, who by the summer of 2020 had enough domestic manufacturing capacity of these flat masks, these 3-layer, 3-ply polypropylene masks, to meet all of Canada's requirements. In fact, since fall of 2020, we've had a glut in the market of flat mask manufacturing, of polypropylene mask manufacturing. And so I showed you the VAG, which came from Marish Holdings Corporation, now known as MH Care Medical. It's a company run or led by Sam Marish. And then Primed, which is the Edmonton-based manufacturer. They manufacture a bit in Canada, but primarily in China. Orpix, which set up manufacturing in Calgary under a sweetheart deal, $60 million over 2 years. And then Kaplan, which would do that for $6 million.
I'm no expert. I just want to double check though. 60 million is still a bigger number than 6 million.
Yeah, I don't want to get all technical on you, but it's about 10 times more.
Okay. I mean, you're an engineer, so I wanted to check with you because
Yeah,
I'm just somebody wearing a Yeti onesie.
but we're a lot smarter in Alberta. From March 2020 on, the federal government was inviting manufacturers, Canadian manufacturers, to make PPE, and were throwing money from a strategic investment fund at Canadian manufacturers saying, please, we can't get stuff from China. We're in a global pandemic that is sucking up supply everywhere that's possible. We keep talking about having domestic capacity. We've been talking about it since SARS-1. So could you please ramp up manufacturing and we'll throw money at you? But Alberta, we're way smarter than the feds. We don't need to play along with them. So what the feds did in the summer of 2020 is they did a deal with 3M. I don't know if you've heard about 3M, but they make N95s. They make world-class N95s. And so 3M ramped up production in their Brockville plant. 3M already had a plant in Brockville making N95s, but they boosted production to 100 million masks a year. And the Ontario government gave $23 million to 3M, and the federal government gave $23 million to 3M, and they each got 25 million masks a year worth of production out of 3M's 100 million a year in production. So 100 million mask total capacity from 3M Brockville, 25 to the Ontario government for 23 million, 25 to the government of Canada for 23 million. Alberta government didn't play along on that deal, and they could have. They were looking for a partner. Instead, they spent $60 million on 15-cent flat masks, as opposed to $23 million to get 25 million N95s a year. So if you're looking at protecting your healthcare workers, your AHS, you're trying to protect your healthcare workers, do you spend $60 million to get 40 million flat masks at $1.50 each? Or do you, if you spent that same $60 million, you'd get around 75 million N95s. So, big difference. Okay, so, but we're smarter in Alberta, Nate. We're way smarter in Alberta. We don't need to do stuff with the feds. So that was procedural masks, where we blew money on flat masks to be an also-ran in a commodity product that had a supply glut in Canada by 2020. As opposed to joining in on an N95 deal that we need. So N95s. So N95s, until 2020, Alberta Health Services fit tested its workers for its respiratory program on 2 masks, 2 respirators, I'm sorry. So there's the 3M V-Flex and the 3M Aura. And so the 3M V-Flex is my ducky here, right? So this is the V-Flex, it's a duck. And then the Aura is the one that you see. It's the trifold boat style mask. Right, so this is the Aura, and let's see if I can do this. I don't wear this one often. It has a nice foam on the inside. It's a little small for my face, but here's the Aura, and let me just see if I can put the straps on. See if you can do this. You can do this. There we go. So this is one of the advantages of an N95, is it doesn't pull on your ears. You have one strap up here that goes around the crown of your head, and you have another one here around your neck. And it's a nice, comfortable N95. Not as comfortable as a V-Flex, though, and I'll show you the stats. But this is what AHS used to fit test its workers to until September or so 2020. And then AHS said, we can't get these anymore. And so we're going to switch fit tested respirators to, we're not going to go with 3M anymore. Even though 3M has 50 million respirators a year of capacity at Brockville. No, we're going to go overseas to Shanghai Dasheng. We're going to get the DTC3Z. And the DTC3Z looks a lot like an Aura. One would almost say it's like a clone or a copy. And there's in fact some debate as to whether 3M copied the Korean KF94 or the Dasheng or this, excuse me here, this Aura. But within a year, all of Shanghai Dasheng's respirators were pulled off the market. So for about a year, they were shipping to North America, for example, and then both the US regulator, FDA and NIOSH, and the Canadian regulator said, get this crap out of here. So the biggest problem is they had no quality control system. So some batches would be good and some batches would be bad. Now Manitoba bought some of these too. They tested all of their inventory. They worked on a phase out plan for their employees. I don't know if AHS did. I see some comments from people here, by the way. Yeah, if you were involved or you know about this stuff, yeah, feel free to comment or talk to a journalist you like. So what AHS did is said, we're going to go over to Shanghai Dasheng. That's our number one supplier. We're actively we're actively fit testing our employees to this. In the interim, we're going to use the 8210 and the 8110, which is the smaller version of the 8210. So this is the old industrial cup style mask, and I'll show this guy to you. So amongst cup style N95s, it's about as good as it gets. The breathing resistance, the comfort, could be a lot worse. So I'll just compare the two to you. So this is a McCormick cup style N95 from SARS-1 days. I'll put it on just without the straps on it. But it's a very stiff cup. It's like trying to talk through a paper cup. It's tough. Then this is the 3M 8210, and it's a softer cup. It's thinner. It's more comfortable, but still, here I'll put it on so you should see it. I don't want to make this like a mask Zia try on, try off show.
It's like a fashion show now. This is great.
It is.
I feel like we should get different colors.
It's like doffing and donning on a Sunday night. Because I'm rushing and I'm not a healthcare worker that does this for a living. There we go. Okay. So this is the large. This is the 8210. I don't have that big a face unless I'm at the buffet, but you know it's tight on me. So I'm already feeling the warmth. It has a wonderful seal, and that's part of it. Is it pulls so tightly on your face that this edge kind of digs into your skin, and that's what makes it kind of a no-brainer for fit testing, because it pulls so tightly against your skin that you don't fail a fit test. But I can barely open my mouth. I'm hot. I'm really hot. My face is hot, and it's hard for me to breathe. It's hard to hear me. So, but this is about as good as it gets. And so this is a 20-plus-year-old design. And 3M has changed the material a lot. And 3M is good at material science, so they're good at filtration. So they brought the resistance, breathing resistance on this down quite a lot. But in order to get revolutionary breathing resistance, they need to go to this duckbill style. And I'll show you how revolutionary. So coming back to my Bob Dylan notes, the 8210 cup style was just supposed to be an interim thing because Alberta Health Services was trying to cut over to the Shanghai Dasheng, which got nuked for not having a quality control program and having inconsistent batches. So did AHS then go back to 3M and say, hey, you
If it
guys
ain't broke, don't fix it?
Yeah, and also, 3M added a lot to capacity. I think 3M increased their manufacturing capacity on N95s by about 10 to 15 times. So existing plants, they ramped up, and they brought on new plants. Like the Brockville, for example, plant is part of their acquisition of Racal, which is a respirator manufacturer in Ontario. And so they bought Racal, and then they really ramped up. So did they go back to 3M and say, hey, do you have capacity now? Like, sorry, we went away from you for a year, but do you have capacity now? I don't know, but they certainly didn't go back to 3M. The other thing they didn't do is around 2021, Canadian manufacturers were making respirators now. And so we have this situation that happened in 2020 and 2021 is that in order to get an N95 approved, you have to go to the US NIOSH lab. So for other types of masks and respirators or their approvals, you do the testing at an independent lab and you send the results to the government. And it's called attestation. You say, I'm promising you my stuff is good. If you ever want to look at my results, you can have a look. With N95, NIOSH says, no, you have to have your stuff tested here. And we will audit you. We'll go out and buy it ourselves and double check. But you have to have your stuff tested here, and it's only our results that will allow you to get approved. So there was a bottleneck at NIOSH. They couldn't test all the stuff that was newly manufactured. All these suppliers came on saying, we make N95, saying, NIOSH, can you test it for us? And they're like, we're buried. So they said, we'll just focus on US for now. And for you guys in other countries, well, in Canada, for example, Canada had what's called an interim approval. Health Canada did an interim approval or interim authorization. And Canada also didn't really have much domestic lab testing capacity. So manufacturers could make these, but we didn't have labs to test it. So that came up to speed as well, too. And NIOSH said it's only us that will give an N95. So a Canadian lab could come up and do identical tests as the NIOSH lab, but a Canadian authorization still wouldn't give you that. So the Canadian industry said, you know what, we have the existing Z94 standard for respirators. Let's update and improve that. And let's improve it on areas that are very important, like breathability, for example. And so that standard during 2021 got amended and modified and upgraded. And Health Canada started off with it being an interim authorization, and then the CSA and that body, got involved, finished it up, and by the end of 2021, we had the CSA Z94 standard for respirators. So during 2021, the Canadian industry is making respirators that meet Health Canada requirements, but AHS didn't get those, and some of those are beautiful. I'll just show you one that a family member of mine wears. This is the Eclipse, for example. It's just a simple duckbill. It's like a pocket. It's like a cotton pocket of a pair of pants. And it's just, this is one of many respirators that were made in Canada that got ignored. And the problem we have now is the same thing we had in previous pandemics like SARS-1 or like H1N1, where domestic industry is told, come up to speed, we'll buy stuff from you. And then they don't buy. And these companies, they ramp up, and a year later or 2 years later, they're going bankrupt. So it's kind of disappointing for me as a Canadian engineer, because I see my compatriots ramping up to meet pandemic requirements, The big companies like 3M get the government funding in the 5 and the 10-year contracts, and the little guys, maybe they get a little bit money here and there, and then they're just abandoned. So let's get back to AHS and N95s. So AHS has this 8210 cup style. This is not the healthcare version of the 3M N95. This is the non-healthcare version. This is the standard version. So it's not fluid resistant. And this is a concern for me because the procedural masks are fluid resistant. The Shanghai Dasheng is fluid resistant. These two 3M V-Flex and Aura were the healthcare versions. So they were fluid resistant. But this 8210 and the 8110S are not the fluid resistant versions. They're the non-healthcare versions. And when you look at AHS's precautions for respiratory protection, whether it's airborne or modified, COVID-19 is defined as a contact or a droplet risk. And so workers just have to wear the cup style N95 and then eye protection. Now, some optionally wear a face shield, a visor, but they don't have to. The requirement and the doffing and donning procedure are based around goggles and the 8210 cup style mask. So they're not getting fluid protection. So this is something I discovered over the last few days. And it's something I think needs to be put to AHS as what risk assessment did you do when you replaced a fluid resistant N95 in 2020 with a non-fluid resistant N95, but you didn't tell workers the new N95 was not fluid resistant, and you didn't change the PPE requirements to protect them with a visor, given that the respirator was no longer fluid resistant. So that's an open question for AHS is don't just tell us, oh yeah, we looked at it. Let's see your risk assessment, because especially with COVID-19, if you're defining it as a contact and a droplet hazard, in other words, contact with body fluids, whether it's blood spurt or vomit or urine or pus or all these fun things that we should be talking about with tea, you need to have this kind of protection. Now, let's get to KN95.
Okay. And and then I have a question for you. So I'll bring you back up there so we can do the KN95, and then I have a question.
And how am I doing on time, Nate?
I've got a couple minutes left, but I got Sarah in the wings, so.
Okay, all right, I'll fly along. So in December 2021, these KN95 showed up, BYD KN95s. And I look at that, they're for congregate care only. For some reason, they weren't for acute care. And congregate care or long-term care, group home,
like seniors homes
and seniors homes, yeah, whether they're supported living or long-term care, they're kind of the ghettos. They're sort of the neglected family members in the AHS family, and these came along in December 2021, and they're terrible respirators, and they have a couple of problems. One is, in order to get enough tension on the ears to make a seal, you really have to pull on the ears. And these get uncomfortable very quickly. Second thing, you can probably see my glasses fog up very quickly. So it's very hard to make a seal on these things. And they're hard to breathe through. So, you know, my own parents are at a AHS-owned LTC facility, and the staff there have become like family members to me. They've been taking care of them for years, and they take care of my parents as well or better than I can. And they hate this. They were as mad about these BYD KN95s as they were about the badge masks. It's that frustrating. And what the heck is this stuff? Now, these are kind of in a limbo zone because they're offered as an option if you want allegedly more protection than the flat mask, than the medical mask. But they're not quite at the level of the respirator. So where you're in a situation where AHS will admit airborne transmission enough to allow you to wear a respirator, they say don't wear the KN95. So these are offered to visitors. And as you know, 2022 was the Omicron year. 2023 will be as well too, just different flavors. But So in order to be able to, there was constantly outbreaks in these facilities. Staff were infected, residents were infected. Sometimes staff were infected more than residents. You'd see 12 residents and 16 staff, or 31 residents and 38 staff are infected. And so this was for the designated support person to go visit family. It was available for visitors in general, and it was also available to staff. Now there's a problem with these. In the summer of 2021, the FDA revoked the emergency use authorization for BYD. So let me just see if I can do this right. So on the 6th of July, 2021, the FDA revoked the emergency use authorization for the BYD KN95. And that covers the ear loop, DG3101, as well as the headband, D1102. And Health Canada followed along saying, okay, we and the FDA have got a good working relationship. So if you want to continue to sell these products in Canada as a medical product, as either a mask or a respirator, you need a Health Canada license. You need to apply for interim authorization with us. And so as I mentioned, in 2021, Health Canada was working with industry and testing and manufacturing facilities in Canada to come up with interim requirements. And so in order to sell these BYD KN95s as a medical mask, like a medical flat mask, or as a respirator, better respiratory protection, you needed to make a new application to Health Canada to have this medical device licensed as a medical device. So it wasn't good enough that, let's say you're BYD in Ontario and you have a medical device establishment license or a site license. You needed a medical device license in order for this to be called a medical device, whether you downgraded it and called it just a medical mask, or you said, no, it's actually a respirator. And so BYD did not do that successfully. I don't think they tried. So BYD, under the Health Canada listing of approved medical devices, does not have this product, either the ear loop or the headband design. So I'm wondering, why is it at AHS-owned congregate care facilities? Why is it at long-term care homes? Why is it at assisted living? Why is it even here at all? So we have healthcare workers who, during the fall of 2021, are dealing with Delta and the fourth wave. And then we have Omicron come along. And what does AHS give them? These BYD KN95s. So why didn't they get N95s? Why aren't they getting real protection? Why are they getting a KN95? And then what's worse, why are they getting a KN95 that is not licensed by Health Canada as a medical product, either as a flat mask or as a respirator? What's the point? It does nothing for you. You can't fit test to it. What's the point? So I'll give you an analogy. I was actually I won't take too much time with the analogy. It's just, who's that helping? When you bring along these KN95s into the workplace, you can't fit test to them. You can't use them like a respirator. They're not licensed as a medical device, so you can't even use them as a flat mask. So who's that helping? Is that helping the supplier or is that helping the user?
Do you think this is like, I mean, there's a part of me that's listening to you talk about this, and I'm kind of going back to the children's Tylenol, ibuprofen, we're doing performative stuff. But there's also a part of me, like, do you think that there was an element of this that was like, we desperately need stuff, so we'll take whatever we can get?
Not in 2021. In 2021, even respirator production, Canadian respirator production, was in surplus. 3M doing that big 100 million masks, 100 million 3M95s a year is more than enough to meet all of Canada's acute care requirements. And the Canadian capital industry also had more than enough to meet acute care requirements. So no, it's not a shortage thing. I'll just, people got to know me in Alberta. People got to know me in Alberta through the BYD kids masks, where I went to Health Canada in January and February of this year, reported the Alberta government distributing tens of millions of these BYD kids masks. Right? So if you remember, school was postponed for a week at the beginning of January 2022 in order to get rapid tests and children's masks to kids. And Alberta's government, Minister LaGrange and the CMOH Hinshaw promised that these were medical grade, they were internationally meeting international standards, and they were lab tested, they were medical grade. So these are the BYD kids masks. And they say right on the box, they're not medical grade. And they also say on the box, there's a 4-hour exposure limit. This is also what's on their website. But this box was not sent home with kids. When you got your kid home from school, this box was not in their backpack. What was in their backpack was
The little plastic bags, if I remember right.
Yeah, 2 pouches that looked like cornflake cereal pouches. And so you got no disclosure what the mask was that had been given to your kids. So instead of giving the box where parents know what's going on, instead of identifying with giving your kids these BYD, you just got this mask, this pouch, and there was a QR code on it. And in January, because the QR code didn't work, but I looked at some of the other text on it and I was able to search it, and I was able to find out that these are these BYD masks and that they're not medical grade. So I raised the alarm. I also went to BYD and I asked them, what's the point, what's the source of this 4-hour limit? You say they confirmed to me they've done testing. They said, why do you want the results? I said, well, because 700,000 Alberta kids could be exposed to tens of millions of these masks for the next 8 weeks. So why is it you have a 4-hour limit? What's the issue? Does the microplastics inside break down and their inhalation risk? Or is there a volatile organocarbon smell, and which is affecting children's health? So whether you wear it, if you swap it after 4 hours, do you just renew the problem? And so BYD at that time told me they didn't sell these to the Alberta government. We did not sell these to the Alberta government. And I'm going, well, BYD works in an exclusive distributor called Global Health Product Solutions. But they said, we didn't sell this. And I said, well, I don't care whether you're the ones that distributed it to the Alberta government or not. You're the ones that manufactured it. You admitted you have the test results. Give me the test results. They wouldn't do that. The other thing they said is, we no longer make masks. We no longer stock masks. So we'll keep selling our N95. When you go to BYD Canada's website, you'll see the N95 is the only PPE they sell. But they said, we're not doing masks anymore. We're not doing KN95s anymore. So until this weekend, it was a mystery to me who sold these BYD masks and who sold these BYD KN95s to the Alberta government. So in January 2022, who sold these to Alberta Education to give to our kids? And in December 2021, who sold these to Alberta Health to give to healthcare workers? Well, same people. So MH Care Medical in January of this year put out some tweets where they're selling these BYD products now, and they are trying to get people to buy it. In fact, if you look on their website, you still see them selling BYD KN95s. So I don't know for sure whether it was MH Care Medical that was the distributor between BYD Canada liquidating its inventory to get out of the market and the Alberta government, the AHS division, or the Alberta Education Ministry. But they're the only supplier that has admitted they're repping the products during that December-January timeframe. So, it's another open question to the Alberta government. Where did you buy these BYDs from? Where did you buy the children's masks, and where did you buy the KN95s? Who supplied them?
If you get any answers to those questions, would definitely love to have a follow up on that, because what you've raised is definitely eyebrow raising.
It's eyebrow raising. You know, I have, on one hand, I have a responsibility as an engineer, right? So I have to be careful with my factual, but I also have to protect public safety. And so, like I said, I have no proof that MH Medical was the intermediary between BYD Canada that was dumping its stock, or BYD, the manufacturer, and the Alberta government, but the timing, December, January, matches. Also, the questionable product decisions and the misleading communications are similar. I wanted to talk about, just quickly, breathing resistance. So the ASTM flat mask, by the standard, has a maximum breathing resistance of 50 pascals. So, for the most part, you're not feeling that full resistance, because when you put a flat mask on, a lot of the times the air is leaking around the top, the bottom, the sides. So you're really breathing around it. But for the material itself, it's 50 pascals maximum. The 3M82, that cup style, is 100 pascals, which is pretty good. For a cup style mask, 3M is kind of bound by that form factor because decades of workers have been fit tested to it, 100 pascals. And it's 70 cents according to that 2020 price structure that AHS had. The 3M V-Flex is 40 pascals. It's easier to breathe through than a procedural mask. And it's 40 cents. And then we have the BYD KN95. It's over 200 pascals. So it is more than twice the breathing resistance of the 3M cup style respirators. And it's more than 5 times the breathing resistance of the V-Flex. Also more than 5 times the breathing resistance of the flat mask. So we have AHS binding for 2 years, buying ASTM flat masks from Orpix for $1.50 each. And for 40 cents each, they can get this. And who knows what they're paying for, but it's over 200 pascals is the breathing resistance of the KN95. And
I just want to ask real quick, are you still, I mean, you said that you saw those masks at the long-term care facility that your parents are at. Are you still seeing those masks there? Have they been removed from circulation, or?
So the Orpix masks are still the default mask at Care West. It's a dark blue box now. It's the level 3, not the level 1s. Hopefully Orpix isn't soaking us taxpayers more than $1.50 now that it's a level 3 as opposed to a level 1. These BYD KN95s are still there at Care West.
And those are the ones that don't have the certification as a medical device.
That's right. That's right. Now, I kind of stepped in it because I felt, so at the end of November, my parents came down positive with COVID-19. And so previously, I sort of was aware what was happening with the PPE at Care West. But, and by the way, no criticism of the management at Care West. But when my own parents were sick and I had to wear the material from the same isolation cart myself, and I had to really follow the procedure for doffing and donning and look at the procedures, then I saw, and then it was my business to know what's going on. And so I saw these ear loop KN95s, and these are so bad that the staff are ripping the lower parts of the ear loops off and then manually tying them at the back of their head because they have so much resistance to breathe through. Like, this is the one that the staff tell me is like breathing through a maxi pad. Right? They're close enough to me that they can be this candid. So it's and I've worn it. It's horrible. I wear an elastomeric respirator. I won't say the manufacturer. You guys, if you follow me on Twitter, I love these things. So I wear an elastomeric respirator, so I have no leaks whatsoever, even if I have stubble, because this is soft like a diving mask. I put it on, and I'm good. So in December 2021, when AHS brought out these BYD KN95s, they said that you just have to pass a seal check. So you visitors, you can bring your own masks and respirators now, but if you bring a KN95, it has to pass a seal check. Well, I can pass the seal check in this thing, no brainer. for me to pass the seal check in this KN95, I have to adjust and adjust and adjust. It's still fogging up my glasses. So the screener is telling me, Ziad, you need to wear our KN95. I'm like, how about you pass a seal check in it first before you ask me to pass a seal check in it? You've been wearing it for hours. Let's see you pass it before you ask me to do it. So actually, thankfully, that opened up flexibility for me and others who wear elastomeric respirators to be able to, or higher quality N95s, to wear our own stuff to AHS facilities.
Well, that's good.
Because before they lowered the bar for everybody to get the BYD KN95s in, you couldn't bring your own stuff. You had to wear the stupid flat mask. And then once they lowered the bar for their BYD KN95s, then us visitors who wear N95s and others could wear our own stuff because we could pass a seal check like that, and they couldn't.
Wow.
Yeah, it's frustrating me. Like I said, sorry. So the government of Canada in 2020 bought these KN95s, but with a headband, not an ear loop. And so they don't rip your ears off when you put them on because they've got the headband that goes behind your head. So in this thing, when I saw what the healthcare workers at Care West have to wear with the ear loop, I said, let me bring you some headband ones. So I brought in a couple of cases of headband ones because of a friend that runs a nonprofit. So Health Canada bought them, gave them to Red Cross, said Red Cross ship these KN95s with the headbands to nonprofits that ask and are going to put it to a good use. So I took a couple of cases over to Care West, and their management are looking at it. It's not, on the one hand, it's not supplied by AHS, but on the other hand, it's a superior product. And so, my compliments to the Care West management who are working with me, but their hands are tied because, like I said, Care West is the lesser cousin of acute care, and whatever AHS pretty well says, Care West follows. They have to work really hard to push back on AHS's PPE, right? It's already hard enough to push back on the airborne stuff, but the push back on procurement things, I'm able to say, I'm not speaking for the Care West management, but I'm able to say things that Care West staff and management cannot because I'm just this rowdy engineer on the side that sees.
There we go. Ziad, thank you so much for sharing all this, particularly highlighting the fact that, there's people who are working in long-term care facilities who are certainly, I mean, if it's not licensed as a medical product and it's still being used, there's obviously some pretty big questions there. So if you hear anything, please let us know because we would love to have you back on to talk about this more.
Thanks very much. Oh, should I just say really quick? AHS in February of 2022 put out a video saying that the workplace health and safety lead at AHS put out a video on their weekly AHS PPE question of the week. So that's in my Twitter thread. I'll add more to it, saying that we have these KN95s now, and you can wear them. So they put the product into the workplace in December, and they don't make the video until February. But in his video, he says, so we're doing this at Covenant Care, which is in Edmonton. He didn't mention the LTC division in Calgary, Care West. And so Care West Calgary really gets neglected when it comes to attention from AHS on PPE for sure. And I'd like to see more attention to the quality and the safety and the compliance of PPE to all long-term care owned by AHS, but especially the Calgary Care West division.
There we go. If you want to check out that thread, it's I want to make sure I get your Twitter handle right. I feel like I'm going to because I have it in front of me, but it's at ZIADFAZEL.
That's right.
Perfect.
And sorry for taking the time from the other guests. Thanks for letting me rip.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming on. Well, I'm going to bring Sarah in right now. Sarah Biggs is a political strategist coming hot off the holidays. Did you wear your onesie? Is it a onesie? Oh, it's bedtime already too.
Yeah, it's my phone's telling me it's time to go to bed. I bought that fantastic pajama at Costco, and it has hearts on it.
Well, there you go. See,
I'm wearing the pants right now.
My Yeti onesie just got too hot for me, so
I'm still in PJ bottoms.
Still got the little head right over here, though.
Aww.
Yeah. We take ourselves seriously here at the Breakdown. How's it going? How were the holidays, Sarah Biggs?
You know what? I didn't work for a week.
That's not bad.
I have not done that in 10 years.
A little while. There you go. Did you get
I
anything good?
didn't even take a honeymoon, like to work. It was good. It was Maddie's putting like 3-4 words together, and she's just soaking up 20 words a day right now. It's just fascinating. And I know I've been away a lot, November, December, so it was good to be with the girls and heading to Banff this week with the eldest because thanks school, they shifted the school calendar week when everybody's supposed to be back at work. So no, it was good. I'm waiting for I got the article from the Western Standard framed.
Yeah, you got yourself a little bit famous there, didn't you?
They wrote a hit piece on me, and they didn't even bother to call me for a quote. I'm a little hurt, guys. Like, give me my 5 seconds of glory here.
It's not like they don't know your number. They've called you for quotes and comments before.
They all have it. They even sent me an email one day, and I called the journalist, and I was like, "What the fuck are those questions?" I was like, "Oh, it's you." I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "Save my number." No, they're it's. So I'm gonna get it framed. I sent it to my mom, and my mother kindly pointed that they were missing karate belt colors.
That's true. Let's give a little bit of context. So why did the Western Standard write the article about the former campaign manager for Leela Ahir, as I believe it was phrased?
Yeah, they couldn't use my name. It's because I'm called Take Back Alberta. I called
on Twitter. Just to be clear, this is like the definition of a slow news day right here. Somebody said a mean thing about Take Back Alberta. The we're going to organize ourselves around black belts, and we on our last episode of 2022 we did highlight how much the organizer of Take Back Alberta allegedly loves being white.
Yeah.
So there's that too.
White supremacists. What did I call them? I called them a whole bunch of stuff that it's not wrong.
People called names on the internet. That's the Western Standard.
David Parker had a little fit. And then he started calling me names, and he said he was surprised I still had clients because I suck.
Well, David's an interesting cat.
David is a special kitten.
He doesn't like Michelle Rempel Garner either. We know that too.
He doesn't like strong conservative women. He doesn't like strong women. Point. And then let's what was it saying at the bottom of the article, Nate? Please note that Take Back Alberta is paying
advertises
for on the Western Standard. So, Derek Hildebrand, let me ask you this: did your client call you and had Nisifit on the phone, and you put one of your juniors on to write a stupid hit piece about me? Come on, man, do better. Last week they went after be best. That's the language they understand, right? Be best. They went after Rachel Gilmore this week. Like, what the fuck, guys? They attack every single woman that does not agree with them. And that is not okay, because 95% of the time, guess what? We're right. Bunch of idiots. Anyway.
How do you really feel?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. I saw that article come out, and I was just like, really? This is I mean,
oh, yeah. Serious political business. My kid has more campaigns than those dudes. Wait, my 2 years old would be like a fucking brown belt by now. Come on.
It's if you are ranking it by campaigns involved, she would get a good belt at the very least.
So she would get a few bars too on it. Oh yeah, so
my favorite Take Back Alberta moment from the last couple of weeks was when they tweeted out the meme talking about the dangers of political disengagement, and the quote came from a Marxist playwright. I'm not sure what the hard right conservatives are doing now, being like, and let's talk about the importance of Marxist philosophy.
They're populists.
That's a fair and important distinction to make. Sir Biggs, I want to run down with you some of the things that we ran down at the first half of the show. So to start with, Scott Sear, UCP candidate, they say one vote doesn't matter. Turns out
babies, yo.
one vote can make all the difference. Is this going to be like a touchstone talking point, do you think? Because that's one of the things people like talk about. I mean, even David Parker talks about the dangers of political apathy. But, it really is becoming clear that in some of these competitions, especially the nomination races, and there certainly were some very close election results in 2019, a couple of dozen votes sometimes makes the difference. Well, we now have an example where one vote in a nomination race literally made all the difference in the world. Are we going to be talking about that?
I'd like to see a recount. I'm curious.
Okay. But I mean, even if the recount came out solid, it's still, I mean, I'm hard pressed to come up with a better argument for the importance of political engagement and the importance of casting your vote when you're able to, because it's literally, we now have a guy who tried to block kids being able to access GSAs with some degree of privacy and dignity. He's now going to be the UCP candidate for that area.
What area is it again?
It's let me pull up I have the graphic. It is Bonnyville, Cold Lake, St. Paul.
St. Paul.
There you go.
Yeah.
I saved the graphic because I knew you were going to ask that question.
Thank you, Nate.
You're welcome.
It's how much I pay attention to those guys these days. He was with them. He left. He came back. It's a miracle. I'm surprised it took more than 3 days, but
there we go.
At the end of the day, it just shows how divided the internal politics are. It really shows how, I'm a small C conservative. That's who I am. I'm pro-choice. I'm a fiscal conservative, and all the rest I would say, I'm a socialist. I don't know. I've been called a communist so many times this summer. I don't even know anymore. But majority of people are. Everybody's a little conservative, no matter where or on what, or everybody's a little conservative. But what we're seeing right now is the TBA slate with so here's the problem. We are dealing with people with ideologies that are trying to force their platform on everybody. Oh, we want less government intervention, but we're going to take over every single goddamn government level we're seeing in the province. And we're just going to be shoving down our ideas down your throat because that's how democracy works, guys. And Parker's only worried about voting apathy when it impacts him anyways. He's not, he doesn't have that much of a heart. But it shows how they're not even conservatives. They're populistic, trying to take over a conservative party. Sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but
it raises the interesting point. We've talked about this before.
Black belt.
Yeah, Dr. Wesley, Dr. Jared Wesley has raised this multiple times before, where he's talked about the fact that, conservatism as a label is probably one of the most poorly defined labels that exists. Saying conservatism is like saying car. You could be talking about a Civic. You could also be talking about a Ferrari. There's a big difference between those two things. So saying I drive a vehicle, I mean, yeah, everybody who drives a vehicle, I guess technically that would include bicycles. It's a pretty broad net to cast.
But when dangerous ideology, when ideology that is restraining, they're all about freedom of choice. You cannot be, and we were talking about this in 2021, where I was saying this party is taking a populist turn. We need to be careful. Everybody was like, Biggs, you're crazy. What's happening? we're seeing a hostile takeover of a party. And seems like a lot of people in the party are letting that happen. Right
Well, it's
now, I would.
interesting. The hypocrisy is what I find absolutely fascinating, because for me, I mean, I take a look at Mr. Rob Anderson has just been a gift the last 2 weeks. I don't know what's going on with that dude, but the pictures of his kids with the fake automatic rifles, that was like such a clear little trolling job. But then he followed that up with today, where somebody was talking about California's banning any truck 2010 or older from driving in their state. Well, technically, what they're talking about is transport trucks that are of a certain size, and there's like all of these criteria. So it's not like we're not talking about F-150s. We're talking about great big giant transport trucks. Different thing. But Mr. Anderson came out and said this is coming to Canada soon. If we don't push back, we'll start with older trucks, then all trucks, then all gas diesel vehicles, and we'll be forced to either pony up for unafforded vehicles that barely work in winter or to not drive at all, which is the real goal here.
I've seen a lot of Teslas at minus 50 around Calgary.
Well, as have I. But I mean, the question that it comes up to me is like, wait, so you're arguing that California as a sovereign state shouldn't have the ability to regulate its own internal rules at the same time as y'all, like you're the author of the Sovereignty Act, and you're saying
like, should only be a thing of convenience. You didn't know that?
I guess I'm doing it wrong.
Only when it fits your narrative and gets you brownie points. Like seriously,
it's
fucking ridiculous. Sorry, I'm swearing. I haven't seen you in a long time.
It's been a couple of weeks. Where's the jar? Because last time we chatted, there was going to be a swear jar.
Yeah, I got my bag of candy.
There we go.
Sugar free, because type 2 diabetes. But no, there's no consistency in their messaging. If you I don't know if you've noted a shift into the messaging for the past few weeks from the party side.
A little bit.
The Carbon Tax Bunch. What is it, 1996? Seriously.
I mean, they came out with that movie in the late 90s, I want to say it was, where they tried to movie it, but it sucked.
They're saying they want to win the election. They're saying that we're doing just for Albertans. But what's going to have to happen is that, if we want to use the Alberta Sovereignty Act against, whatever is going to be happening, it's not going to have any impacts on California business because, United States, Canada, 2 different countries. That's number one. Number two, I'm going to have to buy an electrical car if I want to get on the province. If not, I'm going to be fucking gridlock. I'm sorry, man. I'm not going to be doing that. Guys, it's so performative and it's so flavorless and it's so vanilla and it's so not thought out. They hired a guy from Ontario to run an Alberta campaign. Okay, the guy's a good campaign manager. We'll give him that. He's top shelf product. That's fine in the conservative world. But he worked for people that I don't support, but that's okay. We all need to work. But the message will not resonate. And what we're seeing right now is a lot of protectionism. And it's going to hurt us down the line.
It seems like it's almost borderline. I don't know if you can do nationalism on a provincial scale. I think they're trying to, where,
they're trying to have their little control.
I'm going to use that pivot right there, because it seems like they have some sort of initiative, if you will, where they're trying to put Alberta first. Sarah, what do you make of the NHL ads? Let's talk about the Alberta first thing. I'm looking at it, and to me, I look at the fact that we've got Buddy, who used to be working with the guy who developed the R-Star program that Danielle Smith lobbied and was rejected and is now trying to reintroduce. And he started up this third-party advertiser that worked during the leadership race for Danielle Smith and is now saying the NDP are just the absolute worst. And the ads are really quite something. to me, because there's the two that I've seen. One is everybody is very sad because somebody said the letters NDP, and so now everybody is very sad, and we'll do anything for our families. We'll make any sacrifice, but we can't sacrifice Alberta to the NDP. And then the other one is just like, it seems like to me a very cynical attempt to polarize new Canadians, because it's like grossly
it's grossly it's grossly there's too many S's. It's grossly
misrepresentative. I got you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob. It's making me sick because the tactics that they've been using are very targeted towards individuals that don't necessarily have the resources to understand what is happening. It's very disingenuous. It's like, dude, everybody likes having daycare at 50%. Who took the initiative? Thanks, Trudeau. And that doesn't make me a Trudeau apologist. That just makes me realize that he's the one that brought the deal to the provinces. Or, everybody likes getting their extra $300 a quarter in carbon tax, or their child benefit, but no, Trudeau bad. They give you all those wonderful programs that everybody's benefiting from, that one of the spouses' paychecks does not solely have to go to childcare and can be spent in the economy and bring some real meaningful relief to families. Because we're talking like, if you have 2 kids, it's like $1,400 a month here we're talking about. Now, for a lot of people, that's a whole paycheck. So we are lacking perspective and substance, and we're just going for the very infantile, very easy one-liner. Oh, we're going to be putting Alberta first. No, you're isolating us more and more and more every single day. What have they done during the first sitting of the legislature that was useful? Bill 2. But then again, they're like, oh, maybe we should, build our own platform and get people to click a box and say I'm not a robot to confirm that they make less than $180,000 a year. Why would we use CRA that already has all the data on every single family in the country with the income and can automatically distribute the money because they already have the bank account and mailing information? Shocking.
Well, why let the feds be a part of that program when we can just spend all of the money doing it ourselves? Why would we do that?
I'm going to borrow myself from the Premier's office, but that's okay. But let me tell you, that is a very, very, very expensive middle finger that they're trying to do right now, because we brought it on because they don't want to see that the federal government did it for them. No, you just sent an order. Like, if I was to come for them, I would be like, you know what? We talked with the feds. We allocated some funds. We did a transfer. We have asked the federal government, Canada Revenue Agency, to go through the data and distribute the money to who needs it. Because the data is already there. It's already, you just need to do a few queries. Then you have all your data. Then you send your checks. Now people are going to have to go online. And then the province going to have to print some checks. And we don't know how it's going to work. And it's going to be a debacle. And people, who will pay for this? The taxpayers. And who will be impacted for this? The people that need it most. Because if they're thinking about implementing their own system, which is not designed, it doesn't exist, like, forget about the $500 they gave during the pandemic. Nobody could fucking get it. And the system was shit. Sorry.
Jar's filling up.
The people that need the money the most will be impacted, and they will be paying the price of those performative middle fingers. Like, right now, people want to see, like, we want to do... If they're really trying to do good for the province, get over your goddamn ego and get things done.
Well, this is the question. Like, it seems to me, it's all of these own goals. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we take a look at the Tylenol, the acetamin, ibuprofen
What
debacle.
can I say about the Tylenol, Nate?
You were right, and I agreed with you at the time. But I mean, the question is, we have a government that has said, you know what, we're gonna do this really great thing with children's ibuprofen and children's acetaminophen, paracetamol, and it's going to be the greatest thing ever. And then they roll out this idea that it seems like the vast majority of objective people looked at it and went, "Wait, what? How's that going to work? Because none of this makes sense." And at some point, it seems like their choices are maybe everybody will forget about it. Well, we won't. And the other one is maybe we'll just eat it and we'll be forced to publicly eat what a mistake this was. And it seems like we're going to create our own system for providing these checks, as opposed to what you're saying, which is use the existing infrastructure. It's another opportunity for people to
That's
go,
what fiscal conservatism means: using and empowering the existing structures for the good. Stop spending money on stupid shit, guy. It's like when my kid has $200 from Christmas money. She's like, "Oh, I want to spend it." I'm like, "No, you keep it in your pockets. Don't spend it on groceries." I understand the intent, but really, trust me, I got it covered. Like, we need to stop pissing away our surplus. But the thing is that we're not even pissing it away in good ways. And that's what angers me. They're spending so much money right now on performative crap. How much legislative and bureaucrat and executive council time have they wasted on Bill 1 when she's like, "Well, we don't need to use it right now. We wasted a legislative session for that."
literally, that's really the only thing that got accomplished.
Well, Bill 2 came in play, and that was a very important one, but we wasted very important time where we are, everybody's going to call me a communist right now, but there's a lot of work to do and nothing was done. We just showed up to the ball, be like, "Hi, we're here." Danielle waited for her election. Waited for
Well, and she left early. I mean, that's the thing that I keep going back to.
anymore, Nate. Like, this is not what people in the legislature are paid to do. I'm so angry. Like, some people are pushing back, and I'm very, very, very thankful for them. But the bubble, they need to stop enabling Rob Anderson, Bruce McAllister, Danielle Smith, and those people around her. They need to stop, because it's going to start costing a lot to the province. And then we're going to be like, "Oh, what happened to the money?" And like my 2-year-old would say, "I don't know." Because we decided to do stupid pet projects.
I'm going to give you a little happy here real quick, just to give you a little break, just because this makes me smile and I can't watch it enough.
BS detector evolved over time.
I tend to be pretty trusting.
Isn't that the best?
Sorry, I was thinking.
I can't get enough of that. I literally.
So I'm going to tell you a little story. So, when campaigns kind of tie up, we reach out to other camps, and there's backroom negotiations happening, right? If you win, what do you want to what do you want to bring to the table? What can I do for you? Pat my back. I'll pat. There's always negotiations, and they didn't want to meet with us because they were saying because they were saying I was going to bleed liberal red all over. And her bullshit detector is not working because.
Well, she's pretty trusting.
Well,
it's just the second nod. Like I can't. I want to talk about a couple of the other things that happened though, because we could spend some time on the Alberta First Initiative and how terrible they are. But there were some funny things. Like, you were texting me today, and I was like on the Twitter machine seeing the stories, and then you text me another one, and I'd be like, "This is Christmas over here." I swear it was 3 days ago. But we see. Which one do you want to do first? Do you want to do the Freedom Convoy first, or do you want to do John Carpay first?
let's go with Carpe because you know.
What are your thoughts on Mr. Carpe's shocking criminal arrest for the crime?
So when I saw, so everybody knows I'm French, right? It's a little obvious. But when I saw it, I was like, like a very French laugh. Like, oh my God, how dare they? They probably concluded their investigation and they decided I was responsible for something and I had to spend New Year's Eve. Fuck around and find out. That's what happened. That's it. Like, will they ever learn? Like, my kid the other day tried to pull her finger and then an electric plug. Guess what? She's not doing it anymore. She's learning. But it seems like those people, they don't learn. They think that they are immune because they work for, you know, just GCC, the freedom lovers. And they're lawyers, so they have rights. Oh, by the way, one of my friend's sisters was one of the lawyers for the inquiry. It was wonderful. But it's like, guys, like that.
Did you read the statement? Did you read the statement from the JCCF? Because that was
no caught.
I love the fact that he resigned from the JCCF for like 5 minutes as president when all of this bubbled up because the judge said, hey, this thing happened and it's not cool. And Jean Carpe was like, I guess I made a mistake and resigned and then was promptly put back in as president. But it seems like in the public sphere, I could be wrong. I'm not speaking definitively for any of the JCCF lawyers who maybe or may not be listening to this thing right now.
Hi.
It seems like the broad strokes of the circumstances are largely public record. I mean, Mr. Carpe resigned because he did hire somebody allegedly to tail a judge to discredit the judge who was hearing a case that his organization was arguing, which is a bad move. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know. Probably. I can't speak to that. But my favorite line from the JCCF statement is, this charge is wholly unexpected and inexplicable. Like, everybody knows what happened. How is this unexpected and how is this inexplicable?
I'm gonna tell you a story, and it's a good analogy. One day, my 10 years old came home to school. I looked at her lunch. I was like, when it happened, you didn't eat your lunch. Oh no, the microwave was broken. So that night, I go to Walmart. I buy a microwave for school. I bring it to school, and I have my 10 years old crying on the back seat. You're embarrassing me. Why are you doing this? I'm so embarrassed. It was not true. And I caught her because she didn't want to eat her curry. But it's the same thing. They're acting like it. Oh no. What are we going to do? It's like
I just love that a law group says, we're deeply disappointed that the Winnipeg police would choose to lay a criminal charge for events that took place more than 17 months ago. Like, the statute of limitations on stalking a judge should only be 16 months, I guess. I don't know.
No, like 3. So they can have the time to.
As long as.
And how entitled and misinformed and how that ecosystem is tight. So is the tinfoil. They need to stop enabling each other, really. It's getting bad.
I got to read the last bit just because it's the cherry on top for me. It is doubly disappointing that it was decided that these actions should take place during the holiday season when Mr. Carpe is spending time with his family. Instead, on New Year's Eve, he was held in jail for 23 hours in an isolated cell without a cot, mattress, blanket, or even a pillow. In jail.
BYOP?
If you go to remand, like, it boggles the mind that these lawyers have never seen what remand looks like, because I don't
know what remand looks like.
It's like a concrete bench most of the time, if you're lucky. That's it. Like, it's jail. It's not the Hilton. I don't know what else to say. Like,
They're so. Is it because the thing like, oh, I'm a lawyer, you need to treat me nice? Oh no, like Maddie would say. Oh no.
well,
Come
just
on, man.
tell me that you think that you're better than everybody, without telling me that you think that you're better than everybody.
Talking about that, I'm sad we missed the baby announcement.
You know what? I have to say though, there's an amazing reporter out of Edmonton who does the best statistical analysis out there. Her name's Kira Markov. I believe she's CTV. He said
Yeah.
cautiously. I'm working from memory here, but she pointed out today it's actually been 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this year was we can't deal with it. Last year was we really can't deal with it, and the first year was there appears to be a pandemic. And
So
we can't deal
the
with it.
first two, it's excusable. The last one, nuh-uh. Like,
well, it was, I mean, certainly, I think there's an argument to be made, judging from the statements released by the United Nurses of Alberta and judging from the statement released by the emergency medical arm of the Alberta Medical Association. You know, things could have been done differently, and maybe things wouldn't have gotten as bad as they are.
have they heard of Zoom?
I'm just saying.
But you know, creativity is not, you know, or quick intervention, because we always gotta wait until everything hits the fan. Oh, see, I didn't swear.
That's true. You didn't. I got a weird one that I didn't bring up earlier. It struck me last night, and I was like, I don't understand why this is happening. But you coming from the Quebecois fold, is it Quebecois? Quebecer.
Quebecois.
Quebecois, that's the right one.
Oh, I'm so
I always
German,
like to.
but
I just love anglophonizing it excessively and Quebecering it because
Quebecers,
Quebecer. Danielle Smith last night tweeted out a New Year's Eve tweet at 10 o'clock where she said that she was celebrating the Eastern time New Year's, which would have been Quebec. It would, you know, Happy New Year's, Quebec. Everything's always about Quebec. But she didn't do a midnight one.
Was she working at the restaurant?
Well, apparently, yes.
It's a waste of taxpayers' money with all the security and all the screening. Oh my god!
Like, I had questions about that because it seems to me like I feel like there's a chance that some people would go to Danielle Smith's restaurant only because she's the premier of Alberta. I feel like it might not be for the reviews of the chocolate milk. I could be wrong. But is there like a conflict there? Like, if you have your own private business and you're like, hey guys, I'm hanging out at my own private business, you can come hang out with the premier for New Year's in Quebec time. Is that a cool thing? Like, it feels icky to me. I don't know.
Seriously, like, okay, if you want to celebrate with your husband on the table at a restaurant on New Year's Eve, that's fine. But if it's very gray. But it's like,
okay,
because she has security constantly, right?
Yeah.
She has drivers. She has 2 vehicles, like the sheriff's, everything. Then the sheriffs are really lovely. The team is amazing. I love them so much. They're always so nice. But I understand the purpose, but really, that's not cool.
I wanted to run it by you because I looked at it and I was like, okay, I don't understand the Eastern time thing. Like, I just don't get that. But like, also,
probably because she got her bedtime.
I don't know. It just was very odd for me.
It was odd. I don't know. I just don't agree. You know, stay home.
I gotta say, Plain Power threw a comment in here, and they're on point because they talked about the root beer floats. And it occurred to me that last night my family celebrated the New Year with root beer floats, and at no point up until right now did I realize we just used spoons. Like, we didn't use straws at all. And we were fine. I can't think of a time that we've actually used straws for root beer floats. It's a tradition here in our household. I can't think of a time that we've
I
used.
never had a root beer float.
Oh, they're delightful.
It's a lot of sugar.
We get the diet root beer.
Oh, okay.
And then it's just the ice cream. So it's really just calcium. It's like milk. It's good for you. It does the body good.
We had fondue last night. We had a cheese fondue. Then we had like a meat fondue.
And you're judging the root beer floats.
Yeah. Cool. But no, I just don't think it's cool. Like, to each their own, and she's free to do whatever she wants, but we need to be mindful because security ain't cheap. It is not cheap. Do you know how many sheriffs involved in the whole system with the sergeant at arms? A lot.
I don't know. I've never been to the restaurant.
No, me neither.
It seemed, I don't know. It just doesn't sit well with me.
I don't know. I have a lot of questions. It's hard to judge. I feel bad. It's New Year's Eve. It's her husband's restaurant and all that. Fine, we can give her a pass, but don't put it publicly. Just don't. Just they need comms.
Well, Quebec time though. It was the Quebec time that struck me first, and then the more that I started ruminating on it, I was like, I don't know, just feels gross. You had some
to be cheeky.
You had some book recommendations.
Oh, hold on, sorry.
You had asked for a little bit of time to do some book plugs.
Yeah. Here.
And so I want to make sure that we allow for that. I also want to throw it out to anybody who's listening on the Twitter Spaces. If anybody has anything that they want to share, any thoughts, any open mic.
I have one here. And it's called White Fragility. And there's a lot of books. Oh, sorry, I forgot to bring them in. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. There's White Fragility. That is very, very, very good. And you understand like how, white supremacy, it's like, it's characterized by, strong emotions like anger, fear, guilt. When we talk about those strong emotions, word on time when you're controlling your narrative. And then there's another book. It's excellent. And then there's another one called The Armageddon Factor, or The Rise of White Christian Nationalism in Canada. Fascinating to read. It's very enlightening. And it really, we forgot to talk about the convoy, thinking about why. Anyways.
I was going to close with that. I was coming back for it.
And then, so it's very, if you're, like for me, it helps me in my work. So I kind of have to read them. But if you want to understand what's happening in the background right now, I really, really, really recommend those two books. And then there's the book, the 1691 Project. It's a collective from various writers and artists in the United States, and talk about slavery and the abolishment of slavery in the United States. Very, very, very eye-opening. So you get two contrasts. And then there's another one called Five Little Indians. It's about residential schools. And in a time where reconciliation right now is down the toilet because some people decided that it was, and that we are seeing a lot of racism, a lot of anti-Semitism. Oh, and there's another one. It's called Lily's Hands. It's written by a Holocaust survivor, Lily Engman. She's 99 now. She just turned 99 this week. Lovely lady. She lives in New York. Her grandson helped her to write. So we need to read those books. So, when we're doing, do your own research, we need to start. So book is knowledge. Books are, I cannot press how important it is this year to get informed, because there's a lot of stuff that I've seen I cannot talk about, and I will never talk about. There's a lot of things I have experienced I will never talk about. But if you look at what the Western Standard did to me 2 weeks ago, if you look at what all those groups have been doing to Rachel Gilmore, Erica Eiffel for the past year, you will understand why we are getting louder. And I'm not painting myself as a victim here. It's just they're just being stupid. I'm very lucky because I was expecting for it to be very, very busy on Twitter, and for some reason people don't attack me directly. I don't know why. Yes, I can do the list of the books. Anyway, sorry, I saw the comments. I didn't read the comments
Sarah
on it.
Biggs, the comments. We have talked about this.
No, I think
Read them
I
after.
know. It's just I wish okay. But it's important to get informed to not fall in the trap. There's a wonderful Coursera by Tim Caulfield about misinformation and health. I strongly recommend. Next election is so important, guys. I cannot even read those books, get informed, get the facts, learn how to recognize bullshit and racism and sexism. And look at what happened to what's his face Tate in Romania. Because Greta, like, talk about small energy, getting all mad because a 19 years old did an up yours to him, and he got mad and he had to do 2 minutes video saying, whoa, Greta. And then he got caught for sex trafficking. Remember, guys, when there's very, very toxic behavior on the public forum, usually there's more in the background. There's way more in the background. And sometimes it's a lot of things are being hidden. So read, get informed, know how to recognize, understand where it's coming from. The convoy was not about vaccines. It was not. It was not. At Neela's AGM this summer when they elected the board, and right off the bat they started talking about anti-immigration and very racist comment and anti-science and anti-vaccination, I had to walk away because I couldn't listen to it anymore, but I was not able to fight it. The hardest thing right now, guys, it's to fight it because a lot of people are biting because they're look at what's been happening for the past few months.
Past few years.
Won in leadership and she backtracked on every single one of her promises because she wanted to access power. Let's think about that. She wanted 54% on the 6th round. Let's think about that for a second. And it's not because I was working for a different campaign. Let's think about it for a minute. Every single thing that she said that she was going to do, she is backtracking right now. What is that telling you? Maybe, I hope I'm wrong. But, like we were talking when the help would get there for financial help, it's not going to happen right away. I hope the individuals on AISH got their reindexation this month. I really do. Can someone please let me know if they got reindexed?
They did.
They did? Okay. Well, at least there's that, because that was simple to do. But there's so much to be wary of. And, they're like, oh, ideologies and the far left. We're just normal people who wants normal lives. And we're not doing well with crazy. And trust me, I'm tired of being on antidepressant and anti-anxiety medicine. I would love to get rid of them, but I can't because of the kind of work I do. But get informed, guys. And, if some people really want to learn about it and they can't afford it, send me a message. I'll send you a book. Here's my commitment to you. If you cannot afford it, I will send you the book myself.
We're going to be sending out some books because we got people on the Twitter as well. The book that you were talking about, the 99-year-old, that was Lily's Hands, correct?
Yeah, Lily's Hands. Just let me please.
I just want to make sure because there's somebody asking about it.
Yeah, just let me oh my God.
We'll throw the link up on the comment.
I will throw, just let me get the full name. Lily.
While Sarah does that, A couple things that I want to talk about real quick because it
Lily's
is somewhat
promise. Sorry, Lily's promise.
There we go.
Promise. Sorry, guys.
Following up on what Sarah was just talking about there, we got a couple episodes coming up that I'm really excited about in the next week, 2 weeks. One of them is already in the shoots. It's going to be coming up mid-week for our Patreon sponsors. Should be out on the weekend. For everybody else, we sat down with an amazing gentleman from Calgary to talk about the importance of safe supply and how badly the conversation in regards to the opioid crisis and the direction that the opioid crisis response is heading. So that's a conversation with Ewan Thompson. Going to be dropping that on Wednesday or Thursday for our Patreon supporters, and it'll be coming up on the weekend for everybody else. The other one that's particularly pertinent that I'm really excited about, we're recording on Wednesday and we'll be dropping next week. And that is a conversation with somebody who used to be a big part of the anti-vax movement. This is a person who had a very, very high profile in the anti-vax movement, and they have walked back from the edge. They are now going to post-secondary to work in public health to try to address a lot of the misinformation. So really, really excited to be bringing that conversation to you in the next week and a half as well. I got a little update that I want to do, but Sarah's jumping at the bit to say something. So Sarah, you looked like you had something to say.
Yeah, no, sorry, you sidetracked me with the public person that it's.
Yeah, I'm full of surprises.
You didn't tell me that.
I'm building suspense.
Neat. No, I just wanted to talk about the convoy before we go, because I know it's late, but it's January 1st. Everybody, well, a lot of people are off tomorrow. The convoy 2.0 is canceled. What is it, a 10-7?
Apparently. Because it's that organized.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, if you have Telegram, if you type "Take Back Alberta," you will find them on Telegram because it's not a private chat. Sorry. But no, so they canceled it because they want to bring it back to Ottawa, but now there's security concerns and he can't trust anyone around him. Right. That's sweet.
I mean, it's good. I'm sure there's a lot of people in Winnipeg who are going, oh, thank God. I think you might have also just realized that Winnipeg in January sucks.
Like, seriously, guys, if you're trying to make a point, don't tell, it's like sending a letter to CSIS and be like, hey, all the bad people, we're all going to be gathering there on, February 13th for 3 days. So, not fill your boots, friends. Just come and hang out with me. It's not alcohol, it's water. I don't drink.
No judgment.
I'm crazy like that. But no, so it's insane. Like, it's absolutely insanity. There's infiltration in the Freedom Convoy right now. It's not going well.
There we go.
They're scared. They're really, really scared.
Anything else you want to throw in there?
No.
Cool.
It's been a week.
It has. And we're going to be back on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Because we're getting back to our regular rotation and we have
I'll be from Banff, and I'm going to have to check my language because my kid's going to be with me.
There we go. That'll be fun. Definitely going to have to be paying into the swear jar then. Thank you again for joining, Sarah Biggs.
Sorry for
always. That's okay. Nothing wrong with a little bit of extra language.
As long as the Apple Podcast is okay with us.
So I haven't received anything so far. But I did want to do one quick little breakdowny kind of update thing real quick before we wrap the show up, because one of the, we talked about that we were going to do a year in review. The reality is that there's a billion year in reviews that are out there, and it's not, that's probably a dead horse that doesn't need to get beat too badly. But there is an update that I wanted to provide because we have been getting some messages. I have been getting some messages as well. People asking what's going on with the breakdowns. GoFundMe for the legal fund. I realize that it has been a little bit quiet. In good ways and some not so good ways. So I wanted to sort of speak in the broadest strokes that I'm allowed to speak in to let you know, first of all, it's an ongoing issue. For anybody who's not familiar, a little while ago, we got ourselves into some controversial water when we put up a social media post that some people took umbrage with, I'll say. You've been paying attention, you probably know what I'm talking about, but I'm trying to be deliberately vague because enough troubles is enough troubles. That post resulted in some pretty significant legal threats. Those legal threats have not yet been acted on, which is not to say that there hasn't been action that has been taken. And this is one of the reasons why I wanted to open the show in the Yeti onesie, because there have been allegations that have been made that that are just false. I just want to be really clear about that. That there's a belief that I have used my professional work as a paramedic to somehow provide credibility for the breakdown inappropriately. That's simply not true. That has never been my intention anytime that I have talked about my work as a paramedic. Anybody who is familiar with the show knows that the only time that I've ever disclosed that has been when it's directly relevant to the conversation that's going on. And it's been done so in order to try to make sure that there's no accusations of bias. It's a disclosure piece that's critically important that occurs in most professional communities and most medical communities. It's never been to try to say, and therefore, because I work as a paramedic, you should take my political commentary or my puppets or my Yeti onesie more seriously than anybody else who's doing political commentary or playing with puppets or wearing a Yeti onesie. There's probably people who rock the Yeti onesie a little bit better than I do. But this is all to say that there have been actions that have been taken against me in regards to my professional work. There have been complaints that have been made to my professional body. We're running up to 3 now, where people are trying to leverage the role that my governing body has in my professional work to silence me at the breakdown. It's not going to work. It's not going to stop anything that we're doing here. The mandate has always been the same. If we get something factually wrong, we'll admit it, own it, and apologize. But we do commentary and we do satire, and that is completely separate from my professional work in providing care for Albertans, which I haven't even done for the last year because, as anybody knows who's been paying attention, I've been off work with the PTSD diagnosis. So yes, the legal actions haven't happened yet. I continue to get the threats that they'll be initiated any day now. So your support through the GoFundMe piece is incredibly appreciated. It has allowed me to defend myself and prepare and put pieces into place so that if those legal threats ever do come to fruition, that I will be able to defend myself appropriately. So I want to say a big thank you to everybody for the support over the last year. It means the absolute world. Please don't think that it's a nothing burger and that it's gone away. I wish it has. It hasn't. I am limited into how many details I can disclose. But that's the reality. And I want to say a big thanks to Plain Power for throwing up the comment. You're a satirist. Absolutely. That's the whole goal. We're trying to have some conversations. We're trying to make some people laugh. And we're trying to maybe get people a little bit more engaged in conversation. So that's the update on the Breakdowns GoFundMe piece. As more stuff becomes available, and as I'm allowed to share more, I absolutely will. It's an ongoing process. It doesn't look like it's going to be stopping anytime soon. But I can think of nothing worse than people who try to use their power and influence to silence other voices, especially when those other voices aren't saying anything that's wrong. So we're going to keep doing it. Like I said, these next 2 episodes that we've got coming up, these 2 interview episodes, if you want early access to them, you can sign up to be one of our Patreon supporters at www.patreon.com/thebreakdownab. And if you just like the warm fuzzy feeling of supporting the breakdown, you can do that at that website for like just $5 a month, and you get stickers occasionally too. So that's nice. We sent out a bunch of thank you gifts and t-shirts over the holidays for everybody who raised their hands inside of our Patreon page. For everybody else, those episodes will be available on the weekend. I want to say a big thank you again to Ziad for coming up and talking about the masks piece. I want to say a big thank you, as always, to Sarah Biggs for coming up and sharing her thoughts and her profanity. And for everybody who has sat through the last coming up to 2.5 hours of our very first episode of season 5. I mean, we did our first couple of seasons kind of weird, so it hasn't been 5 years. It's 4 years, but it's season 5. We're just getting started still. We're going to keep going. Thank you so much to everybody for listening tonight, for watching YouTube, for sitting out in the chats. Take care of yourselves. And as always, keep the conversation going.